The most important thing that you can do when selling to the government is get meetings. Welcome to part 2 of a 3-part series on selling to the government, based on our book, The Government Contract Planner, which you can get on Amazon right now. And part 1, we covered leads. And the most important thing about leads is finding them ahead of the solicitation. So you want to find them as early as possible. We talked about 3 different ways to find those leads. Essentially, sources sought, upselling your existing government contract clients, if you have them, and acquisitions forecasts. Now, if you're unsure about what any of those are, you can go back, watch, or listen to the episode prior to this episode. We're talking about how to take those leads once you have them and doing the most important thing with those leads, which is turning those into meetings. Now, first, I'm going to cover how to turn those into meetings. And second, and probably more importantly, or as important, is we're going to talk about what to do, what you're asking in those meetings, because it's really a waste of time if you're not getting the information that you need to make you more competitive, more likely to win, or to eliminate an opportunity altogether so you don't waste your time on it. Now, let's talk about the sources sought. I'm not going to talk about what that is, and I'm not going to talk about how to write the sources sought in this episode. We have prior episodes you can listen to, but I am going to talk about how to get a meeting for a sources sought. Now, typically what you're doing, if you want to respond to a sources sought or a request for information, low level of effort compared to writing a proposal, certainly, and you can be a bit creative in there. Now, when you write the sources sought, I'm putting a few things in. One is I'm always giving the option in the sources sought to set up a meeting or a demo if you have something that you can demo. That's one. So when you write the sources sought, always put a section in or a closer that we'd be happy to answer more questions. We request to set up a meeting. If you'd like a demo, if we can give a free demo of a tool, all of those things are great to stick into the sources sought. When you submit the sources sought, typically this is going to be done via email. When the sources sought is put out in sam.gov, is typically where you're going to find something like this. There's going to be an email address of a government contact, either a contracting officer, their assistant, maybe a program manager. You're going to be sending it directly to them. When I send it to them, this is critical. I always write, please confirm receipt, because they may not receive the sources sought. When you send an attachment and put that in an email and send it to a government address, that could be blocked. Also, if you have links like your signature block, things like that, you want to remove all of that, pictures, links. Just put the attached sources sought and make sure you write confirm receipt. If they don't respond to you, you need to assume they did not get it. Okay. On the government side, even not only would companies' emails to me get blocked now and then, but my wife's emails would get blocked. There's a lot of reasons for that, security parameters. Just know you need to keep following up until you get a confirmed receipt. Now, once I get the confirmed receipt, now I come to the next stage. And the next stage for me is I want to set up a meeting, set up a call. So there's a few ways to do this. If you just submitted it and immediately they confirm receipt, you may give them a few days before doing this. But I will typically respond with, fantastic, glad you got it. Happy to set up a meeting or a time to talk. Or we could set up a demo if you'd like. Just let us know if you have any questions, something like that. Now, they're receiving a lot of these, so they're probably not right away going to respond to that, but I'm definitely going to follow up in a couple of weeks. Just want to make sure that now that you've had time to review this, to see if you had any extra questions. Is there anything I can answer? Or would you like us to come in and give you a demo or a brief? You don't want to badger them, but you want to give them the opportunity to set up that meeting with you. That's a great way to do it. So that's number 1, sources sought. You're immediately following up with, do you want a meeting? You're putting, do you want a meeting? Can we meet up? Answer some questions in the sources sought itself. So you're at least creating 3 different opportunities to ask for that meeting. They may say no. Okay, you're not going to get a meeting every time. That's how I do it. Now, the second lead strategy that I went over in the last episode was upselling your existing customers. Upselling your existing customers relies on constant communication with them. And by that, I don't mean you're emailing them every day, but you're following up with them. If you're providing services, you should be working with them regularly and making sure that whoever the lead is, that you're providing services that are good. If they have any problems, that you can correct those. If it's a software tool, are there any optimization things that you could be doing? So the strategy starts with you providing value. Can I help you? When you're providing value like that, you're creating that open communication. You might set up a recurring meeting that happens once every 2 weeks. If you have a one and done tool, then you're following up less often. It might be once every couple of months. But you want to make sure that whether you're using a CRM like GovClose or Salesforce or something, however you're tracking that, you need to have a reminder to keep following up with them. Very important. And one of the things that you can do is when you identify that they have a need for more of what you sell, you can set up a meeting to discuss that. You can potentially set up that meeting to talk about different products or services that you have that they might not be aware of. That's not going to be something that you're going to be able to set up every month, but it might be something you set up once every 6 months or once a year. You want to have some type of repetitive interaction with them. So with that existing customer upsell, one strategy is setting up a repetitive recurring meeting, if that makes sense for the service or solution that you're providing to them. Could be every 2 weeks, could be every month. Another could be just following up every month with an email, asking them if you could provide any assistance, answer any questions, provide any value. And then maybe once every 2 to 3 months, whatever time frame makes sense for your client, that's when you're asking for the meeting, asking for a follow-up, or even asking if they can recommend somebody else that could use your product or service. So that's how you're working with your existing customers. Number 3, the acquisitions forecasts. Those are long-term forecasts. We went over it in the last episode, but they usually have a point of contact. Now you can call them or you can email them if there's an email in there. And it's the same thing. Hey, I saw this forecast. I think it's something we can engage on. Can we set up 15 minutes, a half hour just to go over what this is? I could tell you a little bit about our product service, see if it's a good fit. They may not always want to respond to that, but some offices will set up a meeting with you and some won't. With all of these strategies, I want you to understand, especially if you're not getting any response, that picking up the phone and calling somebody is probably the best strategy of all. Hard to ignore that. A lot of times you'll have a direct phone number. Sometimes you'll get a secretary that can schedule a meeting with you or schedule a call with you. So that's a very strong technique in getting into the program shop. If it's not something you're comfortable with, maybe one of your salespeople. Make sure you're hiring salespeople that don't have a problem with that. Finally, one more note on scheduling meetings. If you can't find the right person in the program shop that you're trying to get a hold of, leverage LinkedIn. Right, LinkedIn is a great resource. Most military personnel are on there, especially in acquisitions, because they're working with different companies. Look up the people by name. You can search for them by office as well. If you have, I think it's called Sales Navigator, it gives you more criteria that you can search for. So you could probably find people in the program shop. I use LinkedIn all the time. It's a great way to make contacts and to follow up and get, again, don't spam people that you have no intention of selling to. Do the research first. Reach out only to people that are existing customers or linked to the office on a source of sought that you submitted on, or potentially with an acquisitions forecast. But leverage LinkedIn. Very powerful tool. All right, let's talk about the questions you want to ask once you are in the meeting, whether it's on the phone, virtual, or in person. One of the things you have to ask, is this funded? Usually, if it's a source of sought, it's going to have funding or kind of predicted funding. If there's no funding, if this is a pet project and there's no funding for it, you've got to lower the priority for that effort. Funding's a tricky thing in the government. There are different colors of money. So there's different kinds of money. There's money for research and development. There's money for operations and maintenance. There's construction funding. There's different kinds of funding. And those types of funding each have different years associated with them. So some funding's good for 1 year. Some funding's good for 3 years. Sometimes funding won't be activated till the next fiscal year. So you want to ask questions about funding. So you want to know how strong this opportunity is for you. Some other questions you can ask about funding are, do they have a maximum budget? What are they looking to spend? Do they have any limitations? Now, some offices won't give you that information, and some will be very honest with you. Well, yeah, we have $200,000 set aside this year to buy X. That's very helpful information for you, right? Especially if you have to price something out for a solicitation. So asking these questions are going to give you answers that probably not going to be in the solicitation when it comes out. The next thing you want to ask is about contracting timeline. When do they think they are going to put this on contract? If it's a source of sod, you want to ask, when is the solicitation going to come out? Now, they are probably going to give you a range. So it's going to come out between June and August of 2025. That's fine. You want to have an accurate idea of how long you're going to be monitoring all of this and where you should put your focus areas. This is the type of information that doesn't necessarily come out in a source of sod or an RFI. An acquisitions forecast is predicting when it's going to come out, but that could change. Like these acquisitions forecasts often come out a year, 2, 3 years before an actual contract, and sometimes they're not updated. They're all different, and we go over it pretty extensively in the podcast prior to this. You want to ask about the contracting timeline. Things change all the time, all the time. Ask how they plan to put it on contract. That's something that can change too. Oh, hey, we decided to go use GSA, or we are going to use simplified acquisitions. We're looking at potentially doing a sole source with an 8A. Ask how they plan to put it on contract, because you want to align yourself with however they're going to do that. That is very important. When I was a program manager, one of the most important questions that I had, once I knew the company or had an idea of the companies that could do the work, I needed to know how I could get to them. So I couldn't get to them through a contract vehicle or some type of contracting mechanism, then I wouldn't be able to put them on contract. So there's lots of ways to do that. We cover it in other episodes, but ask how they plan to put something on contract and ask what the timeline looks like. What are some other questions that you might ask? Depending on who you get the meeting with, you may want to know who's the program manager for this effort, because you want to have that name. Who's the contracting officer going to be? It may not be decided yet, but you want to know if it is, and you want to get a good contact for that person. Is there an incumbent on this contract? So you want to know if there's an existing contract in place, and you want to know if there's an incumbent, meaning a company that's already on contract. If they're on contract, if there is an incumbent, some things you can ask: are they happy with the work they're getting? I would just be blunt and direct. They may not answer you, but ask the question. See if you can get some information there. There's different ways to do that. Is there a security clearance that's going to be required? That could be very important, especially if you don't have one. So ask if there's any security requirements. Now, big picture, I want to know, are there any big challenges with this effort that you're trying to overcome? You want to know what's on their mind, because what's on your mind is probably not what's on their mind. Find out what those challenges are. Make sure you write them down so you can address them. If it's a solicitation, you can address them in the proposal. You may be able to address them on the spot, because their challenges might be something you've already solved. Now, that could become a requirement in the upcoming solicitation. So that's a way of influencing. What are your biggest challenges? Because you want to answer those challenges. And finally, and I think this is one of the most important things, is what are the use cases? And when I say a use case, who in the government is going to be using this? And what specific problem, mission are they trying to solve? As long as it's not classified, they should be able to tell you. And then I would also ask, I would follow up with, are there multiple use cases? If it's a training tool, it might be something that officer training school candidates are using. But maybe you also find out it's something that special forces are using or that they're using in pilot training. So these are things that you want to know, because if they're not going to list all the use cases often in a solicitation. So if you have an idea, because you had a meeting, of what all those use cases are, that means you're going to have more information to write your proposal with. And you're going to be able to hit those. So when they're scoring it, they can go, oh, this guy, they're showing us how they can use this not only in officer training school, but with special forces, or maybe they're actually doing this with another special forces unit and they've given the use case. You're going to do a lot better. It's going to resonate. And those are things you can answer on the fly too. They give you those use cases. If you have past performance or a way of answering those, you can talk through it with them. So that's how you're going to be more competitive. Those are a lot of reasons why to have meetings, and a lot of information you can get from a meeting. And then one final note is, this meeting may help you decide not to go after the opportunity. Good example, you ask if there's an incumbent and they say yes. How are they doing? They're doing great. You love them. You may get the sense that, hey, it's going to be really hard to unseat that incumbent. And then this opportunity may be something you don't want to chase. Or it may be something that you just can't do. The use cases, maybe it's a security clearance, maybe it's some type of use case And once you get into the details, you realize, oh, this is really something that my software application can't solve. Okay, so you want to understand that because you don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste the government's time. Lots of great reasons for having meetings. You're also building a relationship with the government office, right? It's one of the most important things. You want them to know who you are and you want them to trust you. And the best way to do that, set up meetings, provide value, be honest. Okay, that is the pod for this week. Remember, check us out on dodcontract.com, whether you're looking for on-demand training or if you're a company, you have commercial sales, and you're looking for some one-on-one advising, coaching. If you want us to set up your sales process, those are all things that we do with our consulting clients at dodcontract.com. And if you want to check out our book, The Government Contract Planner, head on over to Amazon, just type in The Government Contract Planner. This is mainly going to be instruction with note-taking, right? So note-taking specific for leads, meetings, and then managing a pipeline. These are great for actually bringing to meetings and going to conferences and things like that. So check out the Government Contract Planner at Amazon.com. Thank you for listening this week, and we'll see you for part 3 next week.